This edition of MacVoices is brought to you by Squarespace. Everything you need to create an exceptional website. For a free trial and 10% off your first purchase on new accounts, go to squarespace.com/MacVoices and use the offer code MacVoices3. Welcome to Mac Notables on MacVoices. I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, we have a problem with today's guest. Tonya Engst snuck a book out on us and didn't tell us. She's the author of the newest edition of Take Control of Your iPad, the iOS 6 edition. So we're going to have to beat on her a little bit. Tonya, it's great to have you, even if I had to drag you kicking and screaming to do this.
Thank you, Chuck. It's really nice to be here. And boy, is it nice to have that book out into the world.
Well, now, to let people know a little bit of the backstory here, I was paying attention to Joe Kissel's Take Control of Passwords book. You told me it was coming. Mm-hmm. So I was waiting for it to go live. Joe and I connected. And then several days later, may have been even a week later, you mentioned, oh, yeah, by the way, my Take Control of iPad book is now live. And it's like, well, that's great, Tonya. You're pumping everybody else's book, but you're not giving yourself any credit. Come on.
Well, here's the story. Basically, I've been wanting to finish this book for a really long time. And a number of other books had to be released first because I just felt that instead of selfishly hogging all the editing resources by writing my own book, that I should edit everyone else's book or do the project management so someone else could edit it. So it really got to be after Macworld Expo before I got very serious about really when was this book going to get written. And the book is 226 pages long, so there's quite a lot of book there. And it ended up being that basically 4 weekends plus the intervening weekdays of my life were just all book. And I, having worked so hard on it, became obsessed with getting it released, ideally before Apple could, announce a new iPad or, drop iOS 7 on us. And I mean, I know Apple hasn't said anything about iOS 7, so I know that's probably not going to happen. But I just became very concerned that all this work would be wasted. And so Joe Kissel, last week, we put out a book of his, Take Control of Your Passwords. And it's always easier for Adam, our publisher, if he loads more than one book up into the cart at the same time, if the files are ready. So I said to Adam, when we get Joe's book out, which, we had committed to Joe, we had all the publicity written and everything. I said, when we get Joe's book out, if I possibly can, I'm giving you my book and you're going to upload it. And so that happened. And so the book just kind of popped up into the cart, didn't it? But we hadn't had time to prepare the publicity materials. We always send email to everyone who gets a free upgrade. We send email to the people who get a discounted upgrade to a new edition. We send email to people who haven't bought the book yet, but we think they should. And we Twitter about it, all this stuff. So all those materials hadn't been written yet. And in fact, still some of them have not been written, but they should be very soon. So I just wanted that book to be done. And the way we were able to complete a 226-page book in four weeks, basically, was I had 2 people working with me. I had Michael Cohen, who does writing and editing just generally for the Take Control enterprise. And I had a woman named Lori, who's been helping with customer service. And every day, or almost every day, I would finish a chapter or a chunk over here on the East Coast of the United States. And then that night, Michael would edit it. And then the next morning, I would review his edits, fix things up a little, and then I would pass that same file over to Lori. And she would just go over it sort of meticulously to make sure every button had the right name. And if I said the upper left of the screen, I meant the upper left of the screen. And just all these little picky details. And she did some proofreading too. And so but anyway, the point is, by the time I finished writing everything, I was keeping up with Lori and Michael with putting in their suggested changes. So by the time I finished writing everything, the book had really been edited also. So we went right from editing into production, and here we are. And I actually finally took a little time off this morning. I actually took a sort of a personal morning and relaxed a little, and I guess now I'm ready to talk about the thing.
So, in other words, you rested up for this interview is what it amounts to.
Yes, I got my beauty sleep.
Yeah. Tonya, a 200-plus page book is a pretty big book for Take Control. You all tend to try to keep them a little tighter and a little more concise. And so I can think of a dozen different reasons why the iPad book, couldn't meet that, and not the least of which that we have 2 iPad models now. You have several generations, and it seems like Apple's forever throwing just these little tweaks and upgrades and improvements at you, and they really do apply primarily to the iPad.
Right. Well, I myself, when I wasn't just working on the project, did do some thinking as to what it is that has caused me to put all this effort into writing a long book that will, it will be obsolete. What am I just like hitting my head against a wall, or, why am I doing this? And 2 things became very clear. One is, this will possibly be the last 200-plus page Take Control book for some time. These are just, unless the pace of technology slows down or we find some topics that are more what we call evergreen in the publishing industry, this is not practical. It's not feasible. It's not financially responsible. It's just not a good idea. So we actually, Adam and I, have a lot of brainstorming going on right now for ways that we can sort of provide high quality content, but just have it in smaller chunks so that this does not occur. But so that's sort of on the one hand. But on the other hand, why did I do this? And I think the reason I did this is that I have this very strong desire for people in the world, like just for all the people who have iPads, to really be delighted with their iPads. And it seems like the iPad is this, completely beautiful piece of hardware. Probably in your lifetime, you will not see very many pieces of personal computing technology, home electronics type technology that is that beautiful. It's shiny, it's sleek, it does amazing things, and maybe 10 years from now we'll look back at the first dozen or so iPad models and say, yeah, those were like so primitive. I can't believe we got anything done on them, right? But if you look back 10 years to say 2003, or back 15 or 20 years, they're just unprecedented. And so they're just sort of amazing, wonderful devices. And I want people, when they use them, to have an amazing and wonderful experience. And once you get past kind of the puppy love stage of, oh, look, I turned it on and I can move the icons around on the screen and it's really groovy, you will either just be fine, that's good, but you may start becoming frustrated or annoyed or just working really inefficiently because you don't know what's going on. And it's not delightful when you can't install apps because you don't know how to upgrade your version of iOS. And it's not delightful if you figure out how to turn on the Facebook app, but then every time someone posts to your wall or whatever, your iPad starts making noise and you have to like stick it in the garage at night because you don't know how to turn off the notification. Not delightful. It's not delightful if you don't understand that the little boxy thing that sometimes shows up, it's just a square box with some lines on it, is a grab box, and what you're supposed to do with it is drag it up and down to move stuff. Not delightful. It's not delightful if you don't know that the way you delete stuff is you sort of cross it out with your finger to get a delete button. So there's all kinds of things that are not hard to learn. but you may need someone to point them out to you. And so the point of this book, why it exists, is I really want people to just be happy with their iPads and to not just do brain dead things where someone who is in the know just says, why would you do that? And the reason why is they don't know what to do. So that's why this book is here. And I also want to add, for this particular book, Take Control usually would like every person who wants to read the book in a significant way to please come buy your own copy. For this particular book, although I'm thrilled if everyone buys their own copy, but for this book, if people buy a copy and like it, but know that the real person who needs to read it is someone else in their life, their mom, their daughter, their sister-in-law, brother-in-law, teacher, whoever, that guy who always asks them the questions about the iPad, I want the people who buy it to make a copy. Don't pay me for the copy, just make it and send it to that friend or the 2 or 3 friends out there who need it more than you do. So my goal is this book will make lots of people delighted with their iPad. We are spreading delight. So that said, perhaps you have some questions for me, Chuck.
Tonya, you're the first author ever that has stated that they wanted their readers to have a delightful experience with the software, hardware, whatever. I think that's a very noble and a very unique position to take it. And just listening to the examples about, you put it in the garage because you can't shut the notifications off.
I actually know someone who did this.
Yeah, and it's a great example because there are things that this is brand new territory for so many people, even experienced tech people. And so it's kind of necessary. And of course, now we're seeing the iPad just spread out everywhere into the education market, into the business market. And yes, I know we've seen this for a while. We've talked about it before. Not like now. Now it just seems to really be hitting its stride. And maybe it's because of some of the other competing devices that are coming out. I just saw something yesterday or today, I forget now, saying that the iPad and the iPhone are the desirable. They're the number ones. Sure, some of the others are catching some interest, but the iPad especially still sits at the top of the heap.
It's a marvelous device, and people should find ways to use it that make things more marvelous. So the mission statement for this book is to spread delight, and that's what we're trying to do.
Tonya, do you have any strong feelings, iPad or iPad Mini?
You got to go either way. I personally did not even purchase an iPad Mini, not because I don't like it or I find it icky. No, not at all. Just because my house already has 6 or 7 iPads in it, it seemed a little excessive. I did learn of one feature that allegedly only works on the Mini and the 4th generation iPad. If they have cellular modems, and I was unable to test it because those are the 2 iPads I don't have in my house. So I just had to go with what Apple wrote. But I certainly hear all the time from people for whom that Mini, it's just the right size. The other iPads are just a little bit too big for them, and the Mini just fits the need. And I think people should just get whichever one, rocks their boat the most. And in my book, I do not provide advice on which iPad to buy. I assume as you come in that you already have an iPad, but the book does have this whole chapter called Know Your iPad, where it just runs through the 4 iPads that it covers: the iPad 2, the 3rd generation iPad, the 4th generation iPad, and the iPad Mini, all the iPads that can run iOS 6. And it runs you right through all the different hardware components and which iPad has which ones, and how you can figure out which iPad you have if for some reason you don't know, or maybe you're trying to help a friend who just shows up with their iPad and your friend doesn't know what iPad it is. So we go through all that. And I consider the Mini to be, a fully like a full iPad for all intents and purposes. It's just, a little petite. Lots of things, including myself, are a little petite. So whatever.
Okay. Okay. And I think it's a very interesting thing that you intentionally don't try to help give people advice on what iPad to buy. Because in a 200-page book, you've had to tackle, I mean, you're trying to spread delight. And the interesting thing about the iPad, even maybe more so than the Mac or a desktop machine, is that there's so many different ways to use it. There's so many different things to turn this device into. If you want to consume media, obviously it's ideal. If you want to create, well, what do you want to create? Audio, video, text, websites. I don't even know. I mean, I've been looking at some of the music, some of the audio and video tools recently for the iPad, and that's just a market that's exploding. And then I look somewhere else, and that market's exploding. It just seems like everybody's grabbing onto this thing, mainly because of the touch interface. It's just so intuitive, and that's the challenge, is trying to take that very intuitive interface and still tap all the power that people want for whatever it is they're doing.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable. And a challenge with the book was, it's called Take Control of Your iPad. And of course, everything in the series that we do is take control of something or another. But to fully cover that, I mean, you could write like a 2,000-page book and you might still miss something important. So I cover most of Apple's primary apps, not every single Apple app, but most of them. And I try to give pointers where I know there's a lot of other third-party apps made by developers who are not Apple, where you might want to take a look if you want to go beyond what Apple offers. And of course, there's a whole chapter about how to shop in the iTunes store and get more stuff. I think that in addition to the touch interface, the iPad apps tend to be more specific and narrowly targeted than, say, Macintosh or Windows applications. And because people don't have, it's not as easy on the iPad to move a file kind of from one program to another. It's increasingly possible, but it's not as assumed that you would. So you're seeing more apps that kind of do a whole process for you so that you can go from point A to point B, but to complete a whole project, because it's going to be too hard to string together a group of tools to do that. So it's got to happen all in one app. So like at Macworld, someone was showing me an app where you can record a video, basically tap a couple buttons, have introductory music, intro music, outro music, the ending music, have branding running across the bottom of the video, and a logo running across the bottom of the video, all with like a tap of the finger. And then you can send it off to, YouTube, your blog, et cetera, just with a few more taps. So you can go right from recording to publishing all in one, fairly narrow set of options, but just all in one and you're done. And I think we're seeing a lot of that in a lot of different fields.
MacVoices is brought to you by Squarespace, the beautiful and intuitive website publishing platform that allows anyone to create professional web pages, blogs, online stores, and galleries on a single platform. For a free trial and 10% off your first purchase on new accounts, go to squarespace.com/MacVoices and use the offer code MacVoices3. And they just launched built-in e-commerce, so you can sell digital and physical items from your website, all within the Squarespace platform. That's squarespace.com/MacVoices and the offer code MacVoices3 to get 10% off your first purchase. Tonya, do you advocate any particular activity or function to try to get people familiar with their iPads and how they work and maybe what they can do?
Oh, well, I mean, basically, the frustrating thing with the iPad is what people want to do to learn it is to stick it under their pillow at night. sleep on it for a few nights and just have it like magically come into their brain, right? That would be really ideal. Instead, what I think everyone should do is buy my book and read it. I think that would really solve the problem. But for those who want a sort of a middle ground, or who want to buy my book because it's really great, but need to sort of think about how to dip in, I think it's really important to just say, I'm going to take 15 minutes, and I'm going to dink around on this thing. I'm not really going to try to do anything. I'm just going to tap the screen and see what happens. I'm going to tap all the buttons. I'm going to read, read the thing that comes up. I'm going to think about what it means. I'm going to rotate the iPad the other way because maybe something different will show up. I'm going to double tap. I'm going to spread my fingers. I'm going to pinch my fingers. Just do and watch and learn. I'm going to be curious and I'm not going to be scared. I think just open-ended exploration where you're not panicking about the fact that, you got to get this calendar item in the next 2 minutes because you got to go. You'll learn, and it just, you got to learn this stuff. So, yeah.
I think that's really good sound advice. Not to try to necessarily accomplish something that you really want to do or is really important to you off the bat. The good news is that it's very easy to learn. The good news is you can't really break anything unless you actually physically drop it. The bad news is that if you really want to get the full power out of it, like so many things, you're going to have to invest just a little time. A lot less time than a whole lot of other things we could name, hardware and software. But really, if you wanted to do everything you wanted to do, yeah, it's going to take some time. And Tonya's book.
And, well, of course.
Yeah.
But there's some magic in this thing. And just, I think not only, I think you can really delight yourself. So just here's an example. I first got Siri, and I'll explain what Siri is in a sec. I first got Siri on my iPhone a while back, and I tried it and it didn't really work. So what Siri is it's the ability to press the home button, which is a little round button on the front of the device, and to issue commands to the computer to get it to do things. You can get it to open applications. You can get it to start playing music, stop playing music, make a reminder, make a calendar item, send a message, send an email message, call someone in FaceTime. There's probably, 30 cool things you can do with this Siri thing. And once you figure out Siri, you can also talk into it instead of typing, and it's reasonably successful. It is now, for me anyway. So to go back to my story, I got this iPhone, Siri was on it. I couldn't really get it to do anything, just didn't seem to work. So I don't know if that was me or it, but 9 months later, my husband Adam got an iPhone, and his new iPhone supported Siri also, and he started using it. I was like, hey, it's working for him. So I started kind of copying him, and it was working for me. So I don't know if I just needed more help, or if Apple improved something in Siri. So I started to use Siri a lot on my iPhone, and my actual iPad that I use on a day-to-day basis is an iPad 2, which, very sad, does not support Siri. It's too old. But when I wrote this book, the book covers the iPad 2, that's the oldest iPad, but it also covers 3 other ones that are newer and support Siri. So the Mini, the 3rd generation, and the 4th generation. And I took over my husband's iPad 3, 3rd generation iPad, for the purposes of writing this book. He didn't get to use it for 2 months. So I started to use Siri on his iPad. And you know what? It's really great. You can tell your iPads do a lot of things. And so the book actually has these blue colored tips interspersed all through it that just tell you what you can tell Siri to do the different things that are being described. So if you want to play a song on your iPad, you can open up the music app and find the song you want to play and play it. Or you can just say, you can say like, play David Bowie, or play Rent, play Graceland, play Paul Simon. And you know what? It just does. How great is that? And it's the kind of thing that you wouldn't really ever know about if you didn't see someone do it or read about it, or just happen to press your home button kind of a lot to see what will happen. What I really like Siri for is, personally, I need to do a lot of logistics. I need to call people. I need to send emails to people, put things on the calendar, make reminders for myself, send text messages, etc. All these things involve using some form of a computer, or maybe an iPhone to call someone, but mostly computer or iPad. And what happens if you sit down at your iPad, say, to send an email message to someone? Well, what happens to me is I end up reading email for half an hour. Or maybe I accidentally look at the web for some reason. Anyway, the point is, doing what should be a 30-second task, sending a quick email message, turns into this major computer time. So what I love about Siri is you just press the button and you're like, send an email message to my mom saying we can come at 10 tomorrow morning. That's it. You're done. You didn't even have to look at it. It takes a little practice, but it has actually just made me much more effective at doing the things that I really want to do.
I'm so glad you brought us to Siri. I think it's it was really hot and it was really exciting when it came out. And then because it didn't work quite the way people maybe thought it should, or worse, they didn't take that little bit of time to learn how to talk to Siri, that they said, oh yeah, it's not for me. I think this is a greatly underutilized area in the iPad and the iPhone. And I hate to confess this, but I will confess it to you and everybody watching, that I keep my iPhone or an iPad mini on the dresser or on the nightstand beside me. And instead of the middle of the night when you wake up and you think of something, now I'll reach over, hold the button down, tell Siri to remind me about whatever it is I'm thinking about at 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. and go back to sleep. And it does, like you say, if you take just a little bit of time to learn the commands that he, she, it will understand, yeah, boy, it is just so powerful. And I'm glad to know that you've included some of those commands in there, because it's not like you have to learn a lot of different languages or anything. You just have to learn the key ways to phrase things, and she'll do all kind of wonderful things for you.
That's right, Chuck. And it's not, as you were saying, you just have to sort of know the key ways to talk to Siri. There's not like the one way to say something. You'll find as you use Siri more, and you've probably found this, that you can just say like, make a reminder. And then Siri will say, what do you want to be reminded about? And then you'll say, take out the trash. And she'll say, when should I remind you? And you can kind of go through this, 45-second dialogue, which is kind of like training wheels, because you don't really have to know what to tell her. But as you get better at it, you'll just say things like, make a reminder for 10 a.m. tomorrow morning to call the doctor. And that covers all the bases, and you're done. So you sort of become fluent in it. And one of the things I said with the blue tips that are scattered throughout the book is I try to give examples of some of the longer things that Siri will string together to do a complete task.
Tonya, I was about to ask you one question, and this may lead into it or it may shut me down. Mm-hmm. It sounds like you cover a lot, obviously, about what comes on board with the iPad once you break it out of the box. Do you talk at all about recommended third-party apps or anything that you think people really, they're just essential to a new iPad user, or do you sort of stay away from that because it varies so much by the user and by what they want to do?
Honestly, for a lot of, sort of new iPad users, particularly the kind of iPad users who really need help, Apple put some pretty nice apps on there, and there's a lot to explore. So I feel like, you try to write your book to accommodate as many kinds of people as possible without boring anybody, right? It's just nice. So For the most part, I focus on Apple's core apps, videos, music, iBooks, help me out here. I know they've got other ones, contacts, calendars, iMessage, FaceTime, notes, reminders. I mean, there's like a ton of apps. Oh, and clocks, which is finally in iOS 6, got its own little mini chapter. There's not that much to say about clocks. So as for third-party apps, I do recommend a few, particularly in areas where Apple's app is just kind of known to not be awesome, or like with Apple's Podcasts app. I thought that I would cover it, give directions for it, and then say, some people don't like it, go read this Tidbits article that we wrote recently to find out about other apps. And I started using it, and I was like, this is dreadful.
Yeah, it is. Sorry, but it is.
Just, not up to Apple's usual standard. So in that case, I just said, you can't use this. Either just use the music app, which if you know where to look, your podcasts can all be in there, or, go get something else. So, if you're to the point with your iPad use where you don't want to use any of Apple's apps because you know that there's like a world of awesomeness out there in the App Store, you're not going to get this book for the app advice. You're going to get it because I talk about how to configure about 1,000 different things in the settings app, and how to do awesome iTunes sync and all this other stuff. But you're done. Like if you're done with Apple's apps, you're done. Like if you've used Safari and you like it, okay, but what you really want is some web browser that, gives you 2 web windows at once, or lets you take notes while you view the web, or you want, Chrome integration, or, there's a lot out there. So, and I should also clarify, Chuck, that one of the many jobs of this book, beyond delighting people, is to delight certain Take Control authors a great deal. So, Take Control actually has a bunch of books about iOS. We've got a book that is just about how to get mail working by Joe Kissel. So, he talks about the 5 different ways to set up Gmail on your iPad and what all the pros and cons are. And he just gets totally into it. We've got iOS 6 Networking Security by Glenn Fleischman, which is just, get your geek on for how to network the thing and all that. We've got a complete huge book about iCloud. It might be in competition for the second hugest book currently available. And we've got one more that kind of escapes me. Oh, we've got Joe's Take Control of Working with Your iPad, which is actually a video series that's just about Office documents and more traditional work-related activities. And all of these books, they can't cover 226 pages of iPad basic stuff before they start, because if they did, they would be super huge, right? So one of the jobs of my book is to make it so these other books can say, well, look, if you don't know how to set up your iPad, or you don't know what location services is, or whatever you don't know, just go read this other book. Yes. So for people who have just kind of really, really ready to go way beyond, we got other books for that. So I think does that answer your question? I may have forgotten what the question was.
No, it's a great point. You're trying to strike that balance for the people who are just new to the iPad. You want to get them up and running, but then I'm not going to repeat everything you just said, but if they really want to get into email, like you say, and set up 5 different accounts, then Joe's book is the place to go. You'll get them up and running for that one account.
I think I've got 3 pages about email. So yeah,
and
Joe's got
a book,
100 pages about email. So
right, but it's like so many things. But I think about the Mac. You unpack a new Mac, it's got some very nice apps standard. But really, to start getting things done, you have to go and either load your favorites or get some favorites or get something. With the iPad, you're up and running right out of the box in so many different areas that are so well suited to the iPad. You do start to understand a little about why we started talking about the post-PC era and why the iPad can be such a great replacement for a computer for so many people. and especially the people who just sit out there and surf the web and do email, and that's pretty much it.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, it's very multifaceted.
Yeah. So how much do I pay to get over 200 pages of Tonya Engst delight?
The list price of this book is $15.
Very affordable. And of course, we do this whenever we talk to the Take Control authors. There are a variety of upgrades and discounts available if you've owned it before or whatever. So best thing to do is watch your email or log in, I guess, to your Take Control account.
Just open up the book you already have. If it's in the PDF format, just click the Check for Updates button on the cover. If it's not in the PDF format, look for information right at the beginning of the Read Me First.
Perfect. Tonya, this is your iPad book. You planning any more that you personally will author that you're going to try to sneak out on us?
No, that's all for me for a while. I have to turn my attention to, actually editing stuff and working on fixing up the website and other stuff. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for talking to us. And of course, how could I not say this? You got to go to takecontrolbooks.com to get Tonya's book, along with Joe's book, new book on passwords, and everything else from all the other Take Control authors. And of course, we'll have links in the show notes to make it real easy for you to find all of that as if it wasn't on the website. Tonya, it's been great as always. Thank you so much, and we'll have you back again soon.
Thank you. This was very fun.
Folks, that's the delightful Tonya Engst talking about the new Take Control of your iPad, the iOS 6 version. Please check the website. As I said, we'll have show notes up there to everything. And we'll be back with more Mac Notables on MacVoices. Thanks for watching. MacVoices TV is part of the MacVoices Group at MacVoicesGroup.com. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at BackbeatMedia.com.